What's up, guys? This is Punisher's Paintball media guy Doug out here with Russell at Gog Sports in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. We're here to look at the new Shocker amp. So we're here today, as he did mention, we're here at the factory. This particular model that I have in my hand is a early prototype. So this is one that we've been shooting for about 3-4 months to get a player's experience with it. I'm sure you saw last week we announced our sponsorship of AC Dallas, AC Diesel. So not only do we have Seattle Thunder out there using, but we have 2 other pro teams out there running this marker through the gauntlet. Congratulations on that as well. Thanks, that's awesome. Man. We're stoked to have them on board, and the players always benefit because the feedback they give us goes directly into the marker. So that means that we're going to catch any minor issues and things like that. So when we have a new marker launch like this, where we have so many things that's changing, integrating those pro teams gives us a huge advantage. Oh, totally. So you have in your hand the XLS, and I have in my hand the amp. And as you can see, the physical size is very similar. We have not changed the overall length of the marker. The distance between the back of the grip frame and the front of the grip is the same, but you will notice some significant changes to the trigger area. So first and foremost, we brought the trigger guard up by several degrees, and actually that resulted in a shorter top to bottom trigger. So that's going to do 2 things. One, when a player's grabbing the marker, it's going to prevent them from scuffing their finger on this lower part of the trigger guard, because we did have a number of players provide feedback that they wanted that adjusted. And the other thing we find is it does give it a little snappier trigger motion. Anytime you shorten a lever, whether it be a diving board or a trigger, the shorter the lever, the quicker it's going to be able to go through its span. So this is going to be a little bit quicker for those that do like uncapped semi-auto. I was able to pick that up and handle it a little bit before we started shooting here. Felt like it was a little narrower in the hand just from the actual grip here. Were the grips filed down at all or anything like that? Absolutely. So with the amp, we have a whole new grip profile. The rear grip is thinner, and it's also water sealed, which means on the inside of the grip there's a small ridge that actually locks into the grip. And that doesn't make it waterproof, but it makes it so that the point of entry for water is where it absolutely has to be. So what that means is the trigger has to pass through the grip frame and make contact with the board. So what we've done is raise the water intrusion point from down here at the base of the grip where water could get in. With that being sealed, now the water intrusion point is all the way up here. So if you're playing with wet gloves, wet hands, or in water, we've moved that water intrusion point up to its highest level. So we made this as water resistant as we can. That was smart. That was really smart, because I'm thinking, like, I've played Snake before a bunch. As I'm diving in, I'm not probably going to tip this side of my gun all the way at the top of the grip frame into all that mud and all that muck will be getting through. So that's a great forethought on your guys' part. Absolutely. I mean, it was a relatively simple change to add that. The other thing we've done is we restyled the front grip. So now in previous generations of the Shocker, the grip cover has always been an accessory. It's something that was added on afterwards, and because of that, you can see the body really just kind of flows into it. With the amp, we've gone ahead and made this piece much thinner and integrated it into the body milling itself. So you can see the body milling actually does a small step down here before coming into the grip. And that allows us to make the grip about 20% thinner than the previous generation. So we went a little bit thinner to give it a little bit more handling, but we still kept it beefy enough for people that have big hands like me. You can see I actually have a palm that's the size of the marker. I still find this really nice without it being bulky or overwhelming. So we have a lot of players that really enjoy that. And again, this is going to be backwards compatible. So for those of you that have the XLS or an RSX and want to put the skinnier front grip on, you'll be able to take this right off and put it on the older platform. The other thing too is if you do like a chunkier version, you'll be able to take the old one and put it on the new marker. So if you do like to chunk it up a little bit, you can chunk up the new one if you put the old grip on. That is a very nice snug fit. Like when I do eventually get this on there, that is not going anywhere. The new one does fit a little bit snugger, as again, because it is part of the milling change here. That's okay. That is okay. Well, hey, while I mess with this, I had a question. Are the eyes going to be any different? Obviously the eye covers are very different from what we see here on the XLS. So the external styling is different, so you won't be able to go back and forth, but what we did do is we increased the size of the screw, so the screw that actually removes the eye here, so that those of you that had some issues with either stripping the head of the screw or potentially damaged the screw hole itself. That's now going to be helicoilable on the new one, so you'll be able to repair it without replacing the body.
Awesome.
The other big thing is, even though the eyes remain the same, the sensor themselves, they now go to a mini wiring harness. So the harness used to come down from the eye, travel the full length of the body, and then go back into the frame, which gave it a lot of opportunity to be pinched.
When people were servicing their gun, taking them apart, put it back together, right?
Yep. You got it. Now the amp, those wires only go down to the base here and intersect at the trigger frame where they connect to a secondary board. So that what you runs the full length of the body is a very thin PCB board. So this is an electronic board that's bolted to the body. It cannot be pinched, it cannot be crushed, what have you. So you have zero chance of crushing any wires when you put your body and frame together now.
That's awesome.
As opposed to that. So a lot of what drove the changes in the amp, you know, the trigger guard, the trigger frame, the eye wires were all player driven. You know, one of the successful things about the Shocker is that it was designed for a very specific player. It was designed for the guy that's playing divisional, that's, you know, playing professional, that is buying their own paint. I kind of make that joke. I go, you know, if you're footing the bill for all your own paintball stuff, the Shocker really has a lot of appeal for you because you're getting that level of performance without the level of spend.
Yep.
And then you're giving up very little to get at that price point. Now, what I mean by that is I have a lot of people that'll ask, you know, why is it toolless eyes? Why is the ASA so simple? And those are the areas where we didn't necessarily shave features to save money. We took very specific tactics in order to make things affordable. Mm-hmm. Now, what I mean by that is by having a tooled eye cover, this is a very simple assembly piece. There's a hole through the eye cover and a screw. So the cost and the assembly of that part is why we can produce a marker that performs as well as markers that are much higher without the expense, because we've taken things like the eye system, made it very simple. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the ASA. There is one single moving part in the ASA. So again, very simple. There's only 3 parts in the entire ASA. Simple to machine, simple to insure, and that's how you're able to produce this marker for $900 as opposed to other ones which you see have these fancier features, for example the Lux,
yep,
but are a much higher price point.
Yep.
And the difference between the two is how those things are accomplished.
And I would say a big thing, so I've been a Shocker user for about 2 years now. Awesome that you picked us up at Ohio State. They're just durable. You can, Yasser would know, I'm sorry Yasser, I beat the absolute hell out of my gun. I've never once had an issue of it not working if it wasn't something that was user error on my part. So the fact that you guys, I really feel like you get high-end durability and performance with the mid-range pricing point because of, as you just said, cost-saving features that aren't essential. You still have eyes, you have eye covers, you have an ASA that works, you have a gun that is just incomparable quality. That's what
exactly.
Really
you know, we're looking to compromise on, you know, the smaller things that don't necessarily affect the player's interference as opposed to, you know, taking out features. Now, in addition to all the exterior changes, one of the big headline items obviously with the amp is its new bolt system. So this is the new amp core. Now, as you noticed, it no longer has a button. It's a quarter turn lock, and what's really nice too is that's also venting. So with the previous marker, after you degas it, you'd have to fire a shot or two in order to clear the bolt system prior to putting it away.
Yep.
This one you'll just be able to twist, it'll vent right there.
That's awesome.
And then you can pull it out.
That's awesome.
Now, let me just set this down here. Now, because the amp and the XLS use 2 different types of spool, your maintenance is also going to be different. So previously with the XLS, in order to perform your service, you're going to take down this entire system, clean it, lubricate it prior to a day of play.
Yep.
With the amp, because the part that drives the ball is separated from the part that moves the ball, only this first section is really exposed to debris and paint. So your regular maintenance for a day of play is simply going to be removing this cap, cleaning and lubricating these 3 items, and putting it back together. So your maintenance is even more reduced with this core than over the XLS. So your advantage is obviously your latch, your maintenance, your efficiency. We're going to see about 3 more tubes out of the same tank.
Awesome.
And your operating pressure. We're going to go from 160 in the XLS down to around 110.
That was going to be my next question. That was a great lead-in. Thank you for that. Next up here, I would love to get into a little bit of shooting side by side with Russell here, or obviously we can have Keegan step out in front if he wants to as well. I have yet to shoot this. A lot of other guys on my team were able to be at one of the last events early enough they got to touch it. This would be a first impression for me. We would love to shoot both of them side by side for you guys so you can really kind of see, is the shot gonna be that much different? Hear me tell you at least, does it feel that much different? I'm gonna say this ahead of time, even if it doesn't, for the fact that they've improved on just little things like sealing it up from, you know, any kind of water intrusion, anything like that, making the bolt more efficient, easier to maintenance, easier to service. I love the fact that I can't pinch my eye wires anymore. For me, that's what makes it worth it already without even having shot it yet. But what do you say we get into a little shooting portion right now? All right, guys, here's the shooting portion. I brought Keegan out in front of the camera. He's gonna help me out here with some switching up. I have yet to touch this thing and actually pull the trigger. So first, I'm gonna shoot my XLS just to be reminded of what it feels like to shoot it. All right, so there's my XLS. I'll turn this off real quick. Cool, set it down right here. All right, let me see this baby. All right, we're aired
Doug
up.
has yet to shoot it.
This is a true first impression. Let's go. Oh my. Wow, okay. Let's
get some true side by side.
Yes, you want to do 1, 2, 3 real slow and then a short ramp, and then I'll do that as well?
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
All right, XLS.
Okay. And the amp. That's insane. That's,
oh yeah, a lot more efficient.
I think I might need to fix this hopper, my dude. Let's try some singles. So even though we are using relatively low grade paint here, this is Valken Fate we were shooting, that single shot is just ball on ball. I mean, ropes on ropes as well, but the single shot is what really impresses me. It's just ball after ball, just right where I want it to go, my God. So impression with this guy, way softer.
Yeah.
Way, way, way softer. The XLS is very poppy, and I don't mind that. I've never minded that as a Shocker owner, but this is so soft and like almost squishy, but not so squishy that I can't feel it shooting, which I hate. I prefer a gun that has some feedback. I really like that. So this still gives me that feedback that I want, but it's so much. I don't know how they were able to make it shoot that much softer, but also get more paint out of what we're filling to, if it was 4500 or 3500. But
yeah, same. It feels exactly like an XLS almost. It still feels like a Shocker. It doesn't feel like you're going into more of a Lux X or anything like that type of shot. It feels very similar to the XLS, but it feels better in my opinion. You're still gonna get some of that feedback, and overall, I'm really impressed with it and how they are able to keep true to the Shocker, kind of being a bare bones, just budget-friendly marker that is able to contend with a lot of the high-end markers out there.
Yeah, you are not at a loss going against the CS2s and the Luxes of the world when shooting a Shocker. The last time we saw a new Shocker design come out was at Chicago of 2017, so it's been about 3 years. This is worth the wait, if you ask me. I mean, Keegan and I were talking about this on the ride up. We actually appreciate that Gog in general doesn't really release new stuff until it's something that's completed and ready and different from what you've seen before. They actually make improvements on their products and really make them worth your while as the player. As Russell had said, they take their players' opinions into account when they are creating new products and building these things, and we really appreciate that. I think historically Punishers has always been a Smart Parts, DLX, and Shocker team. There's a reason we stick with Shocker. I mean, this thing is incredible. Russell, thank you very much for letting us come out and shoot that thing today. Personally, big fan. Very big fan. I think I'll be looking to get one in the near future. I wanted to bring up, so as I was shooting my Shocker versus the amp, mine sounds louder. My XLS does sound louder, a little poppier, like thwackier, I guess, than the amp, but we talked a little bit off camera about the whole sound signature thing, and I'd love to have Russell explain that to you guys again. Please.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing is obviously when you test two markers against each other, you want to know chronograph speed. Yep. Now we chronograph these at both around 300 feet per second, so that's going to be the first thing you check toward. The other thing is operating pressure. So the XLS is going to be operating at about 50 psi higher than the amp. And that's really what your ear is going to pick up between the two. I noticed you said, that's a snappier, this sounds smoother, and that's really where that air sound comes from. Is the crack is the higher pressure air. Yep. Now the length of the shot, or the length of the sound, which obviously is measured in milliseconds, is going to be different between the two, and it'll be more brief with the amp. And as I was explaining to him, the reason for that is because in the XLS, when the marker cycles, the bolt is traveling the full length of the marker and transporting the air from all the way back, all the way forward and down the barrel. With the amp, the part that articulates the ball is up here, and then the part that launches the air is right here. So when it's dumping that chamber, it's dumping it right at the base of the feed tube, which is why in a divorced spool like this, it will have a more abrupt shot, although not necessarily louder, it will be more concise, and most players do tend to interpret that as snappier.
Yep.
So that's really where your big sound signature difference is going to be, is obviously the operating pressure and then the cycle length. Awesome. So the cycle length in this being shorter is going to give you a more abrupt or a snappier sound signature.
Thank you for that. That was a very in-depth explanation that I think a lot of people are going to look forward to hearing. I think our next question was going to be, how about shipping these out? What is the schedule for that? What's coming for the amp?
So we've been working really hard. This will be the first marker that we're shipping the same week as World Cup, which is a huge change for us. Normally we're not shipping new markers till spring, but we should have the first black markers come off the assembly line and start shipping out to dealers the same week as World Cup, which is November 7th. I believe. The
week of November 10th. So we're going to play the 12th through the 15th.
So the week of November 10th, these will start leaving for dealers, and then dealers that have placed pre-orders will receive them in the order which they put them out there. I know Punishers has a pretty big pre-order in with us.
Yes, we do.
So they'll see some. And like I said, we're going to be trying to get these going as quickly as we can. This is the first marker we've delivered prior to World Cup. And really exciting, AC Dallas, AC Diesel, and Seattle Thunder will all be shooting these at World Cup too. So that'll be the first time we've had a gun debut at an NXL event where our pro team's able to actually use the marker. So
that actually brings me to one other question. I know obviously there was that one practice video that blew up with the AC, I forget which player it was, but he was using of course, a prototype amp, if you will. How long before that video was released were we putting these guns into pro player hands?
So one of the ways we test markers is we do what's called a test mule. So on the outside, it'll look like our previous marker, and on the inside, it'll be the new tech. Gotcha. So the new tech in this has been tested for about 18, 19 months, but actual player guns. The first time we had a machined body out in somebody's hands was the first time you guys saw that picture. So
you guys did a pretty good job keeping it under wraps.
Yeah, we do a really good job with it, and it's one of those things we try and do it not to keep secrets or anything, but really to try and help stores. Because players always want to know have the latest and greatest thing, and there's been many times where we've tested stuff and it hasn't come out, and we don't want players to be looking for something that's not coming. So that's why we do the testing the way we do, is when we're sure it's ready to go, that's when you'll start to see it out there in little bits and pieces. We actually won't have the mech frame for this until probably January.
Okay.
But what's really cool is Cap Factory. So Ryan Moorhead, Sam Monville, Chad George, actually all just played the Chicago ICPL with a mechanical version of this and won. So even though we don't have the mechanical version out yet, it's already got a win under its belt. So the product you guys are getting in your hands is tested and already tournament proven.
That's awesome. Well, if I had to leave on any one thing, my only thing is going to be the ASA for these bad boys. Are they interchangeable?
They are not.
Okay.
So they are not. We went to a smaller ASA, and in reshaping the trigger frame, we did not be able to go backwards compatible, but we will be offering an accessory come spring. So as I said, the screw drive ASA is a cost-saving measure. We have heard players asking they want a lever action ASA, and we will make that available as an accessory in the spring of 2021 for players that want it.
That's huge.
Well, as you kind of mentioned it before, our goal is to make the gun as affordable as possible, but those people that want to pay for the extra features, we want them to be able to have those extra features. So the ASA will be available in spring, and then a high-rise feed tube will be available from us as well. Awesome. In the summer of 2021. So we've taken the player feedback, and we're doing our best to bring them the products that they're asking for the Shocker line.
All right, let her rip, buddy.
Now this is what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to stick my finger in the breech and physically hold the ball in the path of the bolt. So I'm holding the ball in the path of the bolt.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? For real?
It's pretty easy on paint.
That's insane.
That's impressive. So we're going to take a look at some of the internal features of the Shocker amp. And to start with, we're going to access the trigger frame. One of the things you'll notice first is that there is no forward trigger frame mounting screw on the amp. And the reason for this is its unique lever action frame. To demonstrate that, I'm going to go ahead and remove our rear grip frame screw. This is a 1/8 Allen. Again, just unscrews right out of there, set that aside, and then the frame cantilevers away from the body. And once it's out, you can see the part of the frame here that cantilevers or that levers into the block here. Now with that block, should it wear out or you damage that block in the future, you can see there's 2 screws in there that it's replaceable. So the latch system itself is completely rebuildable. While I have it upside down, let's take a look at another couple really interesting features here. First and foremost, we mentioned earlier in the video the new mini wiring harness for the eyes. You can see it just comes straight down out of the eye pocket and plugs into the secondary board, which runs the length of the body. In the frame, you can see there's a very large pocket for those wires to set, so there's very little chance that you'll ever do any damage to those wires, and the secondary board is screw mounted, so you can remove it. You'll also notice the solenoid plugs into this upper board. That means there's absolutely no wires that go between the frame and the body. The only contact is this single gold-plated contact patch here. And the reason we've gone with gold-plated is because unlike copper or aluminum, it won't corrode. So you're not going to get rich by scraping shocker boards, but it will not corrode or anything like that. So that's going to last a lifetime of the marker. And again, that does make contact up here with the secondary board. Now, AMP stands for Advanced Modular Platform, and the modules we're talking about are the solenoid modules. So I don't have one in my hands right now, but we will have a mechanical solenoid. One of our other videos on the Shocker YouTube channel covers the conversion, but you're able to remove your solenoid simply by unplugging from here and using this wire form to simply pop out your solenoid. So if you've ever worked on a marker before, you know that the solenoid can be one of the most intimidating systems to touch in your marker. We really wanted to make every single part of the shocker approachable, both from a playing perspective as well as a maintenance perspective. So now there really is nothing that's out of reach for any player of any technical ability to go ahead and work on any system in their marker. Installing is just that simple, and then we plug our wiring harness right back in. So again, really nice there. The other nice thing, you'll notice this tube that runs from the regulator all the way to the solenoid manifold. This is now your main airflow path. The reason we did this is just to simplify the milling and the internal structure of the body. And we've also eliminated an internal leak point by putting this milling out here. So there's no chance for that main path to leak. And then finally, one of the features that most people will never really take advantage of, but a few will, you'll notice the trigger return magnet is also mounted on that tube, which means if you strip the body down for anodizing, there are no magnets pressed into the body. So there's nothing you're going to forget should you choose to have the marker stripped and re-anodized. Obviously, we don't recommend re-anodizing guns, but this is going to mean that if should you choose to, there's less chance of you doing any damage. Now, the trigger frame itself, as we mentioned earlier in the video, we've reshaped the trigger guard and we've gone to the wireless contact. But the other thing we've also done is some revisions to the grip and board itself. So the grip comes off the same way as previous markers or previous shockers, just 3 grip screws on either side. You're only going to open up 1 grip screw to change your battery, only open up 1 grip panel to change your battery, and that will be the left-hand side if the marker was facing away from you. And now we have our grip. Now these grips themselves, these are the white ones that will be coming out in the spring, so they're going to marker will ship with black, but these white ones you can actually really see that seal that we were discussing before that locks into the path here, and you'll see when I go ahead and I pop it in, it actually that seal is strong enough to hold the grip in place without any screws. So that seal really is making some solid contact, because you can see it does require some force to pull it back up. So it's got a good seal in there. The other thing you'll notice is we've eliminated the battery harness. It now goes to 2 contact points. The other thing, which as a tech I always love little things, little details that make my life easier. There's a little notch down here at the bottom to take your grip screw Allen key and literally just stick it in there and pop your 9-volt out, which is not a big deal for many players, but for me, it makes it a lot easier to pop things in and out. You'll also notice you've got USB-C for programming updates, and very simple. Now this board unfortunately is not backwards compatible. This will be AMP and only going forward, but we do feel it's a legitimate improvement to the system, so that's why we wanted to go ahead and make it available immediately. Putting the marker back together is just as easy as we took apart. Simply going to cam lock into place and screw in our one grip frame screw in the back here. Now this is huge for players that use a Shocker and X-Ball or things like that, where you may want to take off the frame in between points, that you can easily take it off, put it back on in under a few seconds, let alone the 2 minutes you have between points in an X-Ball match. So just a huge advantage in technical repair systems there. So at the heart of the new Shocker amp is obviously the amp core. The amp core is a divorced spool, which means the bolt and the firing mechanism operate independently. The bolt itself is your main maintenance area, and that's just going to be the bolt cap and bolt itself. These are the parts you're going to clean and lubricate during normal service. And then you have your firing mechanism back here, which is made up of your firing chamber, your prop shaft, and then your shuttle. In addition to these parts, these are all your user serviceable parts. Your prop shaft and your shuttle is something you're going to service probably 2 or 3 times a season. Your bolt and your bolt cap is something you're going to service every time you play. And then your rear bolt section here will not have any user serviceable items in it. However, the one item you'll notice here, this small protrusion, is a QEV, or quick exhaust valve. What that allows it to do is allows the shuttle to move freely and allows the system to recharge very, very fast, upwards of 22 balls a second. Now that doesn't matter very much for tournament paintball where you're playing at 10-2, but when you are playing mech, this system will cycle and recharge as fast as your finger, which is a huge advantage in mechanical play where your rate of fire is determined by your cyclical rate. So once again, this is the all-new amp core for the Shocker amp. Lots of changes to the outside of the Shocker amp, lots of improvements to the technology and features on the inside as well. Thanks for checking it out.